In the chilling November of 1998, a horrific act unfolded, forever altering the course of two young lives. 14-year-old Phillips, consumed by fear and desperation, took the life of his innocent 8-year-old neighbor, Madelyn Clifton. The circumstances surrounding the killing remain shrouded in mystery, a chilling tale of a young boy's fragile psyche and a society's harsh judgment. Phillips claimed that the fatal blow was an accidental consequence of a baseball game, a tragic mishap that sent Madelyn into tears. Fearing the wrath of his abusive father, Phillips, in a moment of terror, made a choice that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The chilling act of violence, a desperate attempt to silence a child's cries, sent shockwaves through the community and ignited a firestorm of public outrage. Joshua Earl Patrick Phillips, a name forever etched in the annals of tragedy, was born on March 17, 1984, in the bustling city of Allentown, Pennsylvania. His early years, however, were far from idyllic. His parents, Steve and Melissa Phillips, struggled with addiction and domestic violence, casting a dark shadow over their family. Steve, a volatile and abusive figure, instilled fear in the hearts of his wife and son. His rage, fueled by substance abuse, manifested in violent outbursts that left Melissa and young Joshua cowering in terror. The once joyful home became a prison, where every moment was fraught with tension and uncertainty. The elder Phillips imposed a tyrannical rule over his household, demanding strict obedience and conformity. He harbored a particular disdain for young girls, a deep-seated aversion that Melissa could never fully comprehend. The inexplicable hatred would ultimately play a tragic role in the unfolding of a horrific event. In a desperate attempt to escape the clutches of their troubled past, the Phillips family uprooted their lives and relocated to the sunny state of Florida. The move, however, could not erase the scars of the past. Joshua, torn from the familiar embrace of his half-brothers Daniel and Benji, embarked on a new chapter filled with both hope and uncertainty. As he navigated the challenges of his new environment, the seeds of darkness that had been sown in his early years would begin to bear a bitter fruit. The tranquil streets of Jacksonville, Florida, were forever altered in the chilling November of 1998. A young life full of promise and potential was tragically extinguished, leaving a community reeling in shock and disbelief. At the heart of this heartbreaking tragedy was a seemingly ordinary 14-year-old boy, Joshua Earl Patrick Phillips. Neighbors and acquaintances described Phillips as a quiet and friendly youth, a gentle soul who blended seamlessly into the fabric of the community. Maddie Clifton, an innocent 8-year-old girl, was a cherished friend of Phillips, a bond forged in the carefree days of childhood. Sheila Clifton, Madelyn's heartbroken mother, recalled a deep sense of trust and affection between her daughter and Phillips, never once harboring any fear or suspicion. Prior to the horrific event, Phillips had led a seemingly unremarkable life. His clean record, devoid of any arrests or acts of violence, painted a picture of a well-behaved and law-abiding young man. His school teacher, who had observed him in the classroom, described him as a popular and well-liked student, known for his fun-loving and playful nature. The stark contrast between the boy they knew and the monstrous act he committed sent shockwaves through the community, leaving them grappling with unanswered questions and a profound sense of loss. The chilling events of November 3rd, 1998, unfolded within the confines of a seemingly ordinary home, forever etching a dark mark on the hearts of those who knew the victims. According to Phillips' account, a fateful day of play turned into a nightmare when 8-year-old Madelyn Ray Clifton, his neighbor and friend, knocked on his door, eager to engage in a game of baseball. Despite the strict rules imposed by his abusive father, Phillips, driven by a momentary lapse of judgment, agreed to play with her. As the two children engaged in the innocent pastime, a tragic accident occurred. A wayward baseball struck Clifton in the eye, causing her to cry out in pain. The sharp sting of fear and panic seized Phillips as he realized the gravity of the situation. The looming threat of his father's wrath, a constant specter in his life, fueled his anxiety. In a desperate attempt to silence her cries and conceal the incident, Phillips dragged the injured girl into the confines of his home. A chilling sequence of events followed. In a moment of horrifying clarity, Phillips, driven by a mix of fear and rage, transformed from a troubled boy into a cold-blooded killer. With each strike of the baseball bat, he extinguished the life of his innocent friend, her screams echoing through the silent house. The once bright spark of life in Madelyn's eyes was snuffed out, replaced by the cold, lifeless stare of death. The aftermath of the horrific act was marked by a chilling sense of detachment. Phillips, seemingly unfazed by the gravity of his actions, interacted with his father as if nothing had happened. However, the weight of his guilt and the haunting memory of his victim's final moments gnawed at his conscience. In a desperate attempt to erase the evidence of his crime, Phillips returned to the scene of the tragedy, delivering the final fatal blows to his helpless victim. The once vibrant life of Madelyn Ray Clifton was extinguished, forever lost in the shadows of a horrific crime. The tranquil neighborhood of Jacksonville was plunged into a state of panic and despair as news of Madelyn Ray Clifton's disappearance spread like wildfire. The once peaceful streets, filled with the sounds of children's laughter, were now enveloped in a chilling silence. At approximately 5 p.m. on that fateful day, a sense of dread settled over the community as Sheila Clifton, Madelyn's heartbroken mother, reported her daughter missing. A frantic search ensued, involving dedicated law enforcement officers and countless volunteers who combed through the neighborhood, desperate to find any trace of the missing child. Amidst the chaos and confusion, Joshua Phillips, a neighbor and friend of Madelyn's, joined the search efforts, his face a mask of concern and sorrow. Little did anyone know, the truth lay buried beneath the facade of his outward grief. As the days turned into weeks, a haunting realization dawned upon Phillips. The weight of his horrific crime, the brutal murder of his innocent friend, began to consume him. In a desperate attempt to shield himself from the overwhelming guilt and remorse, he retreated into a world of denial, a self-imposed prison where the horrors of reality could not penetrate. I was putting myself in a fantasy world that nothing had happened, Phillips later confessed, his voice a mere whisper. That was my defense mechanism for everything when I was a kid. I never made the decision to ignore it. I just did. His words, though simple, revealed the depths of his psychological turmoil, a troubled mind grappling with the consequences of a monstrous act.
Through the entire time, I was putting myself in a fantasy world that nothing had happened, and that was my defense for everything when I was a kid. Was if something went wrong, ignore it; it'll go away. And it worked a couple times, and that's why I believed it. You know what I mean? And I really wanted to believe it.
The chilling discovery that would forever shatter the illusion of normalcy within the Phillips household unfolded on the bleak morning of November 10th, 1998. Melissa Phillips, driven by a mother's intuition, entered her son's room, her heart heavy with a sense of impending doom. A disturbing sight met her gaze. A dark, ominous stain marred the pristine floor. Driven by a mix of fear and dread, she embarked on a desperate search of the room, her mind racing with 1,000 terrifying possibilities. In the darkest corner, a horrifying truth was revealed. There, beneath the weight of a forgotten mattress, lay the lifeless body of Madelyn Clifton, her once vibrant spirit extinguished. Overwhelmed by shock and grief, Melissa fled the house, her mind racing as she raced towards the nearest phone. With trembling hands, she dialed the emergency number, her voice barely audible as she reported the horrific discovery. The news sent shockwaves through the community, plunging the once peaceful neighborhood into a state of fear and uncertainty. Later that day, a somber procession of law enforcement officers descended upon Joshua Phillips' school, their arrival casting a long shadow over the campus. The young boy, once a seemingly ordinary student, was arrested and taken into custody. Within hours, the truth of his heinous crime was laid bare, a confession that sent shockwaves through the community and left everyone reeling from the horrifying reality. However, the state prosecutor, Harry Shorstein, cast doubt on certain aspects of Phillips' narrative. He suggested a darker motive, hinting at a possible sexual component to the crime. Shorstein revealed that Phillips had engaged in sexually suggestive conversations with both Clifton and her older sister, Jessie. While the autopsy report did not uncover any evidence of sexual assault, the prosecutor argued that the absence of dirt and sand on Clifton's body contradicted Phillips's claim that her clothes had been stripped off during the struggle. Furthermore, Shorstein pointed to the lack of bloodstains in the backyard and on the baseball bat as inconsistencies in Phillips's version of events. These discrepancies raised serious questions about the veracity of his account and fueled speculation about the true nature of the horrific crime. The prosecutor's relentless pursuit of the truth and his determination to expose the sinister motives behind the murder cast a long shadow over the case, leaving the community haunted by the chilling possibility of a more heinous crime. The weight of the legal system bore down upon the young shoulders of Joshua Phillips as he was tried as an adult. To shield the trial from the intense media scrutiny in Duval County, Florida, the proceedings were moved to Polk County. A solitary figure in the courtroom, Phillips was represented by Richard D. Nichols, a lawyer whose unconventional strategy would leave a lasting mark on the case. Nichols, in a bold and risky move, opted to forego calling any witnesses for the defense. Instead, he placed his hopes on a powerful closing argument, painting a portrait of a young boy overwhelmed by fear and panic. He argued that Clifton's tragic death was a horrifying accident that spiraled into a nightmarish sequence of events, driven by a madness born of desperation. However, Phillips later revealed that Nichols had shown little interest in delving deeper into the details of the crime. Their interactions were limited to casual chess matches, a stark contrast to the profound impact the events had on the young defendant. Melissa Phillips, unable to comprehend the lawyer's strategy, expressed her concerns, but Steve insisted on trusting Nicholas's judgment. Ultimately, Phillips was silenced, denied the opportunity to share his own account of the horrific events that had unfolded. His voice, stifled by the legal process, would remain unheard as he faced the consequences of his actions. The trial of Joshua Earl Patrick Phillips commenced on July 6, 1999, a date that would forever be etched in the archives of legal history. The proceedings, marked by an unusual brevity, lasted a mere 2 days, a stark contrast to the complexity of the crime and the profound impact it had on the lives of those involved. The defense's decision to call no witnesses further expedited the trial, leaving the jury to piece together the tragic events from the limited evidence presented. During the trial, a battle unfolded between the defense and the prosecution, each seeking to introduce crucial evidence that could sway the jury's verdict. The defense presented neuroimaging scans that revealed bilateral lesions on the frontal lobe of Phillips's brain, a region associated with impulse control and decision-making. This evidence, they argued, could explain the young defendant's erratic behavior and impaired judgment during the horrific event. However, the prosecution countered with a different narrative, seeking to introduce evidence of Phillips's exposure to pornography on his computer. They argued that this could shed light on his potential sexual interest in young girls, suggesting a darker motive behind the crime. The judge, faced with these competing claims, ultimately ruled both pieces of evidence inadmissible. The decision, while understandable, left the jury with a limited understanding of the complex factors that may have contributed to Phillips's actions, leaving many questions unanswered and the full story untold. After deliberating for just over 2 hours, the jury reached a verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. The weight of the verdict hung heavy in the courtroom, a stark reminder of the gravity of the crime. The young defendant, once a promising youth, was now condemned to a lifetime behind bars. The sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, though severe, was the maximum penalty allowed under the law, as Phillips was under the age of 16 at the time of the crime. The swiftness of the trial and the harshness of the sentence reflected the shock and outrage that gripped the community. The tragic loss of a young life, the brutal nature of the crime, and the chilling indifference of the perpetrator had left an indelible mark on the hearts of many. As the gavel fell, the courtroom fell silent. the weight of the verdict hanging heavy in the air. Phillips, a young man trapped within the confines of a prison cell, has found solace and purpose in the pursuit of knowledge and spiritual growth. Despite initial obstacles, he persevered, earning his general education development diploma and later enrolling in college courses. His thirst for learning has not only enriched his own life, but also benefited others. As a paralegal, he dedicates himself to assisting fellow inmates with their legal appeals, offering guidance and support during their darkest hours. His role as a tutor further exemplifies his commitment to helping others, imparting knowledge and fostering a sense of hope within the prison walls. Beyond his academic pursuits, Phillips has cultivated a rich spiritual life. He finds solace in music, playing guitar in a band that provides a much-needed outlet for his creativity and emotions. He also embraces practices such as zazen and yoga, seeking inner peace and tranquility amidst the harsh realities of his incarceration. The prosecution's acknowledgement of his exemplary behavior during his 2017 appeal serves as a testament to the transformative power of self-improvement and the potential for redemption, even within the confines of a prison cell. Phillips's refusal to pen a letter of apology to Clifton's family speaks volumes about the depth of his regret and the complexity of his emotions. He expressed a desire for a face-to-face encounter, believing that a heartfelt apology could only be conveyed through direct human interaction. Clifton's mother, however, remained resolute in her decision to distance herself from Phillips, her heart forever scarred by the tragic loss of her beloved daughter. As of 2024, Phillips continues to serve his life sentence at the Cross City Correctional Institution. The weight of his crime, a constant reminder of the irrevocable harm he caused, weighs heavily upon his soul. Meanwhile, the world outside the prison walls moves forward, oblivious to the internal struggles of the man who once committed a heinous act. The passing of Steve Phillips on June 27, 2000, marked the end of an era, a chapter in the tragic saga of the Phillips family. The man who had once cast a dark shadow over his son's life was gone, leaving behind a legacy of pain and suffering. As the years pass, the story of Joshua Phillips remains a stark reminder of the destructive power of violence and the enduring impact of human error. As we close this episode, our thoughts and condolences are with the victims' families for all our stories. Losing a loved one is never easy, but losing them in such a violent way is a wound that never fully heals. As always, we thank you for your support. Don't forget to subscribe to Crime Cat Podcast for more bone-chilling, wicked, and twisted episodes.